the weekly show with David J. Maloney. This week, David finishes his conversation with Doug Johnson of Loverboy. And now, here's your host, David J. Maloney.
Welcome, everyone, to the weekly show. I'm your host, David J. Maloney. On tonight's show, we finish out our interview with Doug Johnson of one of the 80s most iconic bands, Loverboy. Loverboy was responsible for so many hits like Working for the Weekend, Loving Every Minute of It, and Heaven in Your Eyes. And Doug gives us an inside perspective into life in the band as well as into a successful solo career. I also want to let you know that the weekly show with David J. Maloney podcast, where you can listen to the unedited full-length interviews of all of our guests, is now available to stream on all major platforms. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to finish out our interview with Loverboy's own Doug Johnson. What was the writing process like for you guys? I mean, I'm imagining notepads, cassettes, just totally different world than we kind of live in today for how you take stuff down. What was the process like for you guys?
So typically, one of us would come to the rehearsal hall with an idea, and I would play a riff and a lyrical phrase, or Paul would have a riff or half a song written. Mike would have a bass part or something. We positioned a cassette recorder in the middle of the room. We found the ultimate sweet spot for it to be able to pick up all the instruments, even though it was just, like just a simple monophonic microphone picked up, because we had a little mini PA system in our rehearsal hall. So we found the sweet spot and we just hit record, and then we would play the ideas. Sometimes we would just let it run for hours, and then Paul would go back home and listen through and pick out segments that he thought were worthy of further development. Yes, lots of note taking, lots of lyrical, ideas scrunched up and thrown away. And I took notes. Most of it I just sort of memorized, but there were times when I had my manuscript out and I'm writing ideas out and making sure that I, can remember some idea that I had that I don't want to lose it because we're moving quickly through to another idea. But that's kind of how the process was. It's just work. It's just, you had to be patient because the technology was certainly nowhere what it is today, where you can, but the creative process still requires work. There's just no other way around it. You have to kind of stick to it and put in the hours to come up with ideas that will see the light of day.
Is there, what songs or song from Loverboy would you say probably have your personal influence stamped on them the most? Or were they always this collaborative effort?
Yeah, they were all pretty collaborative, I would say. I mean, we all kind of threw in our ideas. I always came up with my own keyboard parts, and Paul would have some ideas, and my job was to embellish and to stay out of the guitar's way, basically trying to find my place, because and likewise, if I had a keyboard centric song, say for instance a song like Take Me to the Top, which has this big synthetic intro, big analog synthesizer intro, well, he found a great place with his wah guitar, and if he had been playing big power chords, it wouldn't have worked because I had already occupied that space in terms of the sonic field. So that's what we did. We kind of found our place in when we're building this ultimate stack of sound. You have to find your place within that, and that was a challenge. So I would say Take Me to the Top was obviously that came from keyboards. There was a lot of cuts like DOA from the first album that was pretty keyboard heavy. There was actually there's keyboards in every song. There's keyboard parts that are pretty, I would say, crucial to the character and personality of the song, and that's kind of what we did. We all contributed to that creative process.
Do you have a particular favorite touring memory, like one you're never going to forget because it means so much to you?
Okay, so being the keyboard player and we just spoke of the song Take Me to the Top. We were playing in Baltimore, probably 1981, first album had come out, done okay, and the U.S. record company kind of skeptically released our first album in the States. They only pressed, I think, 10,000 copies initially, not expecting it to do much. And we proved them wrong, thankfully. But our second album was out, and they released it in the US also. And it started to get traction on FM radio. And so Working for the Weekend was starting to get lots of plays. So it was Take Me to the Top, and in different places. It was very interesting to see what places sort of favored the different songs on the record. So we're in Baltimore. We're at this massive festival opening up for Foreigner and Journey, and it was just I think Joan Jett was on the bill, the Scorpions, and we're like the third man up, and we're out there. We're on our third song. I think it was Get Lucky, and it was like, yeah, it's a bit of this is a bit of a slog. I don't know if this is going to work. This is a tough crowd. And so I'm transitioning into Take Me to the Top. I do a little keyboard solo, and then I go into the song. So there's a little pause, a little pregnant pause, and then boom, 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 and I go into the song. So between that pause and between me starting that introductory note pattern, everybody in the JFK Stadium stood up on their feet and cheered like this crazy, yeah, with their fists in the air when I started Take Me to the Top. And I was absolutely blown away. I got chills up my spine just from the response that we got. And everybody in the band turned to me and went, yeah, like, this is great. I think we got him. And so unbeknownst to us, Take Me to the Top was a very highly played track in the Baltimore area. And so when we went into it, it was just amazing, the response that we got. So that's one of many great memories that I have of the early days, certainly.
And you were talking about earlier how you play a multitude of different types of instruments, and you certainly have not been a one-trick pony for the last, I'd say, 40 years. I understand you have been or had been composing for cinema. What drew you to that?
I think when we took our break between 1988 and 1993, I just kind of turned my attention to writing music for some films and some TV shows. And I actually worked for, believe it or not, an ad jingle company in Vancouver. And that was really educational, and I learned a lot about, what goes into the art of crafting a branding piece of music and that sort of thing. And then I turned my attention to some movies. I did a movie called Chained Heat 2, which was kind of a bit of a spicy thing back in I think it was 1991, 92 when that came out. It was with Bridget Nielsen. Remember, she married Sylvester Stallone, tall Danish woman.
Yeah,
she was
ended up with Flava Flav. Yeah, boy.
Yeah, that's yeah. So, anyways, that was a starting point, and I did some other things after that, and then I got into doing a lot of documentary work on TV documentary series, and lately that's kind of where my focus has been. I did a movie a couple of years ago called River Blue, which is a documentary that examines the environmental impact of the garment industry in the third world. So the camera crew went all around the world to, South America, to Southeast Asia, Africa, all throughout Asia, basically documenting what's happening when you have these huge corporations that are going into these countries with impunity and basically contaminating the local water supply with all of their effluent that's coming out of their manufacturing process. So that's what it was called, River Blue, because there's some rivers in China when they're making denim jeans that turn blue from the dye that they just release into the local river. And of course, it's causing all kinds of health problems for the local population. And so It was a bit of a downer, the movie. I mean, it was a real eye opener for me, and certainly made me more aware of my buying choices when it comes to clothing. There are a lot of different clothing now that has less of an impact on, if you look for it, on the environment. So, and then I did another one called The Last Paddle, about a very famous guy who, it was sort of connected. There's almost a sequel to that movie, and about his life traveling the world, the world's river system, and documenting the health of the planet's river systems. So yeah. So then now I'm doing a documentary series. I'm starting right now. Actually, I'm working on it now. It's called Northern Air Rescue, and it follows 3 female pilots who live in northern Canada. They have a small airline there, and they do all these search and rescues. They do supply delivery runs. They do all this sort of really death-defying stuff because the weather up there is just so unpredictable. And they're in these little planes. And so they're making a series, kind of a reality TV series, about how these women are able to cope with the challenges of being in that place and being female and being a pilot at the same time. So yeah, I enjoy doing it because we go on the road, and especially during the COVID lockdown, that's kind of what I did. And I missed playing, but I also really enjoyed working on these different projects. So.
Now, you've got a fantastic tour coming up with, I think, REO Speedwagon and STYX. How did that come about, and what got you 3 bands together? I mean, had you guys ever done stuff together before?
So yes, we have. To answer your last question first, we've done lots of shows with these other 2 bands over the years. We're like brothers in arms. I mean, when we see each other, we hug each other and congratulate each other on us, number 1, being alive, and number 2 still and number 2 being able to
high five. You're still alive.
So yeah, hey, we're still here, man. We're still above ground. This is great. And then also just the pure privilege of being able to play still and play for people that are wanting to come and see your songs and hear your songs. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's like going to be just one big happy family, and there's no like ego issues anymore. There's no like, well, they can't have any of our lights and they can't have any of our PA system. And it's all, no, it's all equal. We're going to open up. We'll probably play for between 35 and 40 minutes. And then I don't know how they're going to order it after us, but I'm sure we're going to be the opening act, because, we're the junior team in this whole roster. So we'll yield our opening position they'll yield their opening position to us, and that's probably how it's going to work. But I'm really looking forward to it. We got dates all the way from May till the end of September now. They just added a bunch of new ones.
So what can audiences expect to see from the bands if they pick up some tickets?
So you're going to see just the hits. You're going to see all the songs that it's going to be like a time travel experience, I think, because for a lot of people, music are the time signposts, I guess, if you will, of their lives. And when they hear these songs, it's going to transport them probably back to a time in high school or college or elementary school, who knows. And that's what we want. We want them to experience that same the feeling that they had when our music was kind of the soundtrack to their life. Because we hear that so often. People come up to us after the show and says, you have no idea what it's like to hear you and see you again live after all these years. It says it just brings it all back, all the great times I had before I had kids and before I had to have a job and all this stuff. And so that's kind of nice that we're able to do that.
Oh, it's interesting how a certain song will bring you back to a road trip you were on, or an event in your life. And especially when it has that kind of nostalgia that brings you back to, in many cases, times that, everybody, it's interesting. We tend to look back on our younger years more fondly as we
Right.
get older. So it is kind of, it's awesome when you get to do that. You know, I think I know I saw Paul McCartney for the first time, like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And it brought you right back to, like you were saying, brought you right back to Ed Sullivan, because he's there and he's got the Hofner and he's bouncing the same way. And you're like, I'm back.
Isn't it great? Yeah. Music that's the magic of music, I think, is it really just transports you back to that time. And I actually saw him I went with my brother to see Paul McCartney about 10 years ago. And he was in really good voice that night. He sang just up into the rafters. And what a great journey that was, because his career spans so many times. And certain songs would come up and I go, oh my God, that was the summer of 1975. I remember when that song came on the air and I was working outside as a gardener and it was so great. I got a great tan that year, and all these memories just come back. And it's great when people tell us that our music has that same effect on them in a positive way. It's just very satisfying to hear that.
So where can our audience go to follow you guys on social media?
We have a Facebook page, and to get there, we are at loverboyband.com/Facebook, and that will take you there. And we post occasionally after shows or when something's happening to one of us or collectively all of us, or we just want to put a message out of some kind. So that's basically where you'll find that kind of stuff.
Doug, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate the time we've been able to spend together. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Johnson.
Thank you very much.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. A special thanks to Doug Johnson of Loverboy for joining us. Closing out tonight's show is a special presentation of Loverboy's brand new single, Release. Stay safe, everyone.
It's a matter of fact. Think about